Can you stay calm for your child's first 7 tantrums of the day, but when it gets to the 8th, you kind of start losing your cool and become reactive? My name's Jodie Thornton, and I want to talk about how I help people to move through this stage so that they can become a really reliable, safe space for their children's big feelings. So the very first thing I want to talk about is actually what happens when your child is in a tantrum, because ultimately our goal is not for you to become like the most zen monk that can stay calm no matter what other people's emotions are doing. Like ultimately you may choose that as a longer term goal, but the more immediate goal is actually helping your child to regulate during those times. What we want to be able to do is help our children recognize their feelings, like after having been regulated, and by actively helping them calm down. So we're actively helping them with our body language, with our word choice, with our tone of voice. So I really want to encourage you to build your skill set here. The reason I say that this is really important is because if you were going through a period where you were feeling really comfortable with those skills, then the number of tantrums your child would be having would be decreasing overall. Because the more you help your child regulate, the shorter and less intense those tantrums are, and the more you can help them to recognize what are the feelings that are happening that are getting them overwhelmed, and then the two of you can work to recognize those feelings before they actually get overwhelmed with them. And so that being the case, we wouldn't really be worried about your ability to hold space for 8 tantrums, because there wouldn't be 8 next week. We would be seeing those numbers, like the volume and intensity, really gradually come down until we get to a place where your child is only, let's say they're tantruming when they're really tired, or they're only tantruming when they're starving hungry and haven't had enough to eat, right? We're getting to that place where it's a rare occurrence that they're tantruming. So if you're in a stage where you actually need to be able to hold space for, 8 plus tantrums, 11 billion, sometimes it can be a lot when we're in those tantrum phases. If you're in a space where you need to be staying calm for that many tantrums, we want to focus, before we focus on your ability to stay calm, we want to focus on your ability to actually help your child regulate. Now, the vast majority of parents that I work with, their ability to stay calm is closely linked to their skills in being able to help their child. The reason for that is their ability to stay calm is impacted severely by feeling like they don't know how to help their child. So once I give you those tools to be able to know what to do and to see it working, to see your child be able to regulate, you can see that your child is calming down while having their feelings validated. All of a sudden it's much easier. Not necessarily 100% of the time, not necessarily when you're tired, and not necessarily for 8 times in a day, right? But like, you will really see that your ability to stay calm will get better the more skillful you feel, and also the more you can see your child is getting supported and getting what they need in those moments. So if that's something that you need some support on, the link to grab my free webinar on supporting your child through tantrums, that will take you through the step-by-step of what to do. It's jodiethornton.com/tantrums. So you can go to that webinar, grab the video, it's less than an hour long, and it takes you through the step-by-step how to help your child regulate. The next thing I want you to focus on, again, I don't want you to go then to your ability to stay calm, because the next thing I want you to work on is your child's emotional awareness. Because what we want to see is your child being able to identify those feelings when they're whispers, so that the two of you can work together to deal with those feelings, so then they don't get overwhelmed and end up tantruming. So what can we do here? The easiest way for a child to recognize their feelings is to recognize the physical sensation that happens when they get upset. The reason for this is that it's easier for us to recognize physical sensations than it is to recognize our emotional state. I don't really know if that's like an inherent human thing or if it's just because of the culture that we're in. All I know is that we're all in this culture, so that's how it goes, right? So for now, what we want to do is start tying your child's physical sensations to their emotions. So if you notice that they're getting frustrated and their fists are starting to clench, you say, hey, sweetie, I can see your fists are really tight. Are you frustrated? Right? And it doesn't matter if it's a question or a statement. Only use a statement if you're pretty sure you're right. But like, and it doesn't even really matter what words you're using, but you're drawing the link for your child between my physical sensations and my emotions. That really helps our kids to start to pay attention to what's going on in their body, which helps them to recognize, hey, I have a feeling that I don't know what to deal with. No, don't know what to do to deal with, right? There's a really important first step. The second thing we want to do is to be able to articulate their feelings. So giving them words. And most gentle parents are already looking at the words to use, like sad and frustrated, angry, all of those things, right? So keeping up with the naming of the feelings. But the key then is tying the feeling to the need. So the feeling of anger that they cannot have the plate they want is not tying a feeling to a need, it's tying a feeling to the lack of the solution that they're seeing right now. Why do they need the plate, the specific plate that they want? Why do they need that? Is it because they're a child who really likes routine, and by having things to be the same every day makes them feel relaxed in their body? Very different to the baby always gets exactly what kind of bottle she wants, but I have to take whatever plate people give me, right? So then it's more about, do I matter, right? We have this new baby and I don't feel like I matter, so I need to assert that I matter based on getting the plate that I desire, right? You're looking for what is the deeper need. How can you tell you've got into the deeper need? Number one, there are 11 billion ways to solve a need. Anytime that you're looking at something that is inflexible, that's not a need, it's a strategy or a category of strategies, right? So you want to be able to choose is not, like you want to have things your way is not a need. You want some sense of autonomy, that's a need. We can get autonomy met in a million different ways. You want to have things go your way says, well, once I've declared what I want, everybody else has to acquiesce. We can't get that met in a million different ways, right? So you can see that's our number one thing to look for is, are there many, many, many ways to get this need met? The second thing we want to look for is, do you see this need as valid, right? So if you're perceiving what they're needing as something that's not valid, chances are you're looking at more the surface level. You're not getting into the depth of a need. So if it's something like, again, you just want things your way, if it might be, I'm trying to think of a great example of something that feels invalid. Oh, even sensory things. Like sometimes it's like you just don't like the way that feels on your skin. If you're looking at, I'm looking for comfort, right? So that doesn't have to be the one specific shirt, but it can be many shirts, right? It doesn't, not necessarily the scratchy shirt or the shirt with the bad tag or, all of those things. But we're looking for something that feels valid for you. So we look for those two things that will get you, if you answer those two questions, you'll be very likely to be able to figure out what that underlying need is. So if we want to be looking for tying those, noticing the feeling is coming up, then tying it to the need. Once you're doing that, then we're looking at how do we get that need met, right? If you're doing those things, all of a sudden you'll find that we can catch the feelings before they get overwhelming, and we can find solutions before we get overwhelming. Now, I would say that if your child is tantruming regularly enough that you're watching a video that says, I can only stay calm for the first 7 tantrums, you may find that it takes you a little while to be able to work together to find a solution that your child is willing to accept. And that, like, there's a process of getting quicker at it, both you and your child. It's not just an obligation on you, but your child will be really creative the more they get experience with finding a solution. And secondly, there's a sense of building up trust, because a lot of the time with gentle parenting, we are very much focused on our child's needs, but it's very much we're doing what we can to get their needs met, and when we can't, we're kind of like in that, like, holding limits or boundaries or having empathy space. There's not a lot in the current gentle parenting kind of generation. There's not a lot of learning how to problem solve together and trusting that we're going to hold everybody's needs as equal and valid and important, and we're going to find a way for everybody to get their needs met. the process of coming up with ideas and then figuring out which one's the best option, that can feel like an eternity to a small child. And so it takes a little bit of time for your child to build trust that it's a good idea to not a good idea to build trust that staying with that problem solving process will result in them getting what they need more often, and then they can stay regulated through that process. So it can take a little bit of time, but you'll get faster at it the more practice you have. So then, once you've done those two things, the vast majority of the time, I don't find that our next step is to work on your own regulation when your child's tantruming. The reason for that is your child is having so few tantrums that you can actually stay calm and you don't need to be focused on that. If you do need to stay focused on your triggers when your child is tantruming, even after you've done those first two steps, then there's a few different strategies that we can take. The very first one that I would say is to look at what are the thoughts running through your mind when you are upset that they're tantruming. Looking at, is that the truth? So things like, well, it's just never enough, right? I do and I do and I do. It's just never going to be enough and this child's going to be a selfish person. Is that true? Right? And it's not. I was trying to come up with we might be worried about that, but ultimately it's not true. All that's happening is that we're coming from a generation who was raised to accept what you're given, be grateful for what you're given, and when you're not given what you would like, you have to learn to cope with that. We're shifting into raising a generation who accept that their feelings are valid and their needs are valid and they deserve to have their needs met as often as possible. And so this is an enormous shift. Just that is an enormous shift. If your child is if you're doing and doing and doing and it's not enough, chances are what's happening is we're focusing only on the child's needs and not on yours or everybody else's involved, right? And that's a skill in and of itself. Now, that's just one example of the type of thing that can trigger you, but you can see how we can unpack those things. And I have lots of different options as well if you end up in that space where you're doing step 1 and step 2 and you're finding that ultimately you do need to work on your ability to stay calm when your child is overwhelmed. Then there's lots of different ways, but working out which one is the most useful for you, it's much quicker and much easier if we've done step 1 and 2. Reduced how often your child is tantruming, reduce how long and intense those tantrums are. Once we've gotten to that place, we can look at just the specific instances where it's hard for you to stay calm, and we can look at what's the root cause of those and address them. Now, what I find is more likely to happen is that you get really, really skilled at meeting your child's needs and you're not really aware of your own emotions and you're not really aware of your own needs because our culture teaches us not to be. For exactly the reason I just said, is that it's not just the way parents were raising children, it's the way our culture works, is that we are, you are given what you're given, and if you're not receiving what you're given, you're supposed to learn to cope with that and be grateful for what you do have rather than figure out how to get more of what you need. That being the case, most of us parents are not very aware of our own emotions. We're not very aware of our own needs. And so for most of you, once you've done step 1 and step 2, you'll actually need to start looking at what are your own emotions and what are your own needs, and then working out how to get your child's needs and your needs met at the same time. Now, if you need any support through all of that, for any of the processes, if you're getting stuck in any way in step 1 or step 2, or you're getting to that place where you do need to look at your own regulation, or you do need to build up your own emotional awareness and your own awareness of your own needs, I would love to support you through that. So if you can book a free call at jodithornton.com/call, CALL, and we can have a chat about where are you up to, what's working for you and your child and what's not, and I can help you get quickly to the things that are going to make the most difference in you being able to be a safe space for your child's biggest feelings. Also, building up your and your child's emotional awareness and your awareness of what your needs are, and problem solving together as a team. We can chat about where you're up to and what I think would be the most effective and efficient way to get to a place where you're enjoying meeting each other's needs and you're enjoying that problem solving process together. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about what I've talked today at all, please feel free to pop me an email. It's jody@jodythornton.com.